I want to take you back in time a little bit in my life. Most of you know that I became a police officer in my early 20s. And I was excited about it. I never saw myself becoming a police officer. But here's the thing: there's a big chasm between I want to be a police officer and I am a police officer. A lot of wannabes in every area of life. So I had to go to the police academy, and I had to learn. I had to confront my fears, because by nature at that time I was pretty fearful. My dad was very dominant in our family. And I was very subdued, and I didn't know how to speak up. I didn't know how to speak my mind. I didn't know how to take authority at all. And so God prepared me for ministry by making me a police officer so that I didn't back down every time any little problem came up. So I was forced to face my fears. And some of my fears were to have somebody mad at me that were bigger than me. But what was wonderful in the police academy, they teach you how to use tools to balance the scales. No, to upset the scales, to put you on top instead of the other person. And if you do what they teach you to do correctly, most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time, if you will do what you're taught in those months in the academy, you will come out on top no matter what you face, because they make sure they give you the tools, and it's all about using the right tool at the right time. Okay? But here's what got me the most. When I went through the police academy, there was a #1 killer of police officers, and it wasn't what I thought it was. You know, I thought it'd be handguns. I thought it would be maybe convicted felons. But the #1 killer of police officers when I became a police officer was this word called complacency. #1 killer of police officers. Complacency. Let me read the definition of complacency for you out of the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Complacency is self-satisfaction, especially when accompanied by unawareness of the actual danger or the deficiencies that there are. Are you hearing that? It is a satisfaction with where we are, with the status quo, and it's also accompanied with not really understanding the dangers that are there or the lack of preparedness that we have. And so they taught us right from the beginning, there is no such thing as a routine traffic stop. Now you'll hear it in the news, police routine traffic stop. There is no such thing as an actual, there are some that act like they're routine, but there's no such thing as routine. Because most police officers died at that time while making traffic stops. They had video after video after video of guys going up, putting their hand in the car, talking to the guy, and next thing you know, a gun's coming out. What happens is, the guy's already made up his mind to kill the police officer. He sets the officer at ease. Hello, sir. How are you doing today? And now you know that if you've ever had a police officer refuse to shake your hand when they're giving you're getting a ticket, now you know why. Because what they showed us is that people would say, hey, thank you very much, and take the hand that you're going to grab your gun with and grab hold of it, take a knife and stick you in the stomach. Yeah, but that's the criminals that do that. Well, here's the problem. Criminals don't always look like criminals. And the really good ones do not look like criminals. Complacency, we were taught, was our enemy. And you know, as I was in that academy, and they made us go through much training, and this was 20 years ago. You weren't allowed to even hold a gun. And I grew up with guns. You weren't even allowed to hold a gun on the range until like a whole week of training about guns and about safety. And you know, I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been killing things my whole life. Yeah, that's the thing. We don't kill anything that we shouldn't be killing. So we would sit in that little trailer of that academy out at the range, and I'm dreaming of being out there shooting my gun, and instead I'm in here drawing sight pictures and how to properly holster a weapon, and then they progress you up to the fake guns and the fake bullets, and you just can't wait to get out there. And then they make this statement. They say this. They say there will come a time in your career that you will not even want to come to the range anymore. And I want you to remember that complacency is your enemy. I want you to say complacency is our enemy. Complacency is our enemy. And at that time, everybody in the academy, including me, said, no, we're going to be top guns. We're going to come every week, because the department would give you 50 rounds a month. We're going to come every month, and we're going to be good, and we're going to be prepared when that time comes. And then years into it, I became a firearms instructor myself. And I found that career police officers that had been in the police department for over a year or two did not even like going to the range to qualify once a year. Some of them would pull out their guns and I would look at it and inspect it, and it had not been cleaned since last time they were at the range. This tool that will keep you alive in times of turmoil is not clean. Why is this gun not clean? Because of complacency. Because no one in our department has died in the last year. Because no one has died in the last 5 years. But you let combat begin in the streets and you'll never see a police officer without a clean gun. Why? Because complacency will be out the window. I'll just tell you, with the things going around the world today, I'm not a police officer anymore, but I can guarantee you complacency is done away with in police officers' hearts and minds, because now they are really up against some real trouble. Well, how does that have anything to do with us? How does that have anything to do with King David, who we've been studying? Because God said that David was a man after God's heart. Okay? So we're going to be turning over to 2 Samuel. But before we read that, we're going to see today where complacency put David in a place of weakness, and that weakness led to his failure. David's complacency is what led to his failure that we're going to look at today. Today we're going to see that having a good heart is not enough. We have to have a prepared heart. Boy, how many of you have a good heart towards love the Lord? How many? Hopefully all of you just love the Lord. How many have a prepared heart, ready to do battle? Putting on the armor of God, right? We think about that once the war begins. Now's the time. No, now's the time not to prepare. We have to prepare before we face the battle. If we don't, then we've entered into complacency. We're not going to win. Today we're going to see how a man after God's heart can be distracted. Today we will learn complacency is our enemy. Amen? Complacency is our enemy. So let's get right over into it. 2 Samuel chapter 11. We're going to fast forward into David's life now. He's about the age of 50 years old. He's been king for some 20 years. He's enjoying his life as a king. He's defeated every enemy that has come up against him up until this point. He has established Jerusalem. First he took Jerusalem from the Jebusites, and he made it the center of government and the center of worship. So I want you to see I want you to enter in with your imagination. This is where King David is now, a 50-year-old guy. How many of you are at least 50 years old today? It's okay, you can raise your hand. And he's king. The only thing better than being 50 is to be king and be 50. Because by the age, and I'm not 50 yet, I have to be honest, I'm still 5 years away. I'm not at 50, but even at 45, I'd be a much better king than I would have been at 35. And I know that at 50, I would have been even a better king. So right at 50, you've learned so many mistakes you've made. You look back and you go, wow, my kids would have came out different, everything, my career would have came out different. Things that used to bother you don't bother you anymore. How do I know? Because I'm closing in and I see the changes in my own life. Things that used to just bother me, they don't bother me. It's not a big deal anymore. That's not complacency, that's reality. But it can lead to complacency, and that's exactly what happens to King David. He's now enjoying success. He took Jerusalem. I mean, what else is there to do? He was going to build God a house. God goes, no, I'm going to have your son build me a house. You know, just on and on. So David is now taking it easy in the kingdom. David has found complacency as his friend, but the problem is complacency is our enemy. Verse 1, it says, then it happened in the spring. We're in the spring right now, aren't we? Or are we in the summer yet? Spring. Yesterday and the day before felt like spring. Then it happened in the spring at the time when kings go out to battle. So in other words, fighting season. You hear about that in Afghanistan today. The fighting season had come. That David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they destroyed the sons of Ammon and besieged Rabbah. But David stayed at Jerusalem. Complacency is our enemy. He had become complacent. He had become secure. He was king. Why go out and do that stuff anymore? All the other kings do it. I've risen above that. I've got a trustworthy guy, Joab. Let him go do the dirty work. I am going to stay in Jerusalem and just rule the city. Here's the problem. When he stayed home, something else happened. Verse 2. Now when evening came, David arose from his bed. Did we see a problem here? It does not say when morning came. This is a sign of complacency. Laying around in the middle of the day. Unless you work midnight shift, this can get you in real trouble. Laying around in the middle of the day make you lazy. Amen? make you overweight, if that's something you're concerned about. If it's not, then fine. But it can do these things to you because you're not moving, you're not doing it. And so with David, he's laying in bed, gets up in the evening. So here we see the complacency leads to laziness. Once we think we got it all together and everything's fine, we get lazy. And I'll just tell you how many times I've seen this in Christians' lives. People come in to the kingdom of God, get saved, and they fight their demons, and everything starts going really good. And then about the time they hit that lull of, things are going great, things are going good, then you start seeing them slip out of fellowship. I'm not saying slip out of church, because you can not be here and still be in fellowship. But what I found, I've never seen anyone ever, period, and there may be one, I'm just saying I've never seen it, who has slipped out of the congregation of the church who hasn't also slipped out of the fellowship of other believers. Ever. You may know somebody that's a strong Christian today that doesn't belong to a local body, but I have never met one, and I will predict that person will not remain strong, because the body of Jesus is supposed to be in unison with one another, filling one another. When one's down, the other's up. When the other's up, the other one's down, and they help each other, right? And when you don't have that, weakness comes. Period. All right. So David has become lazy, and then it says, and he got up and walked around on the roof of the king's house, and from the roof he saw a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. Let me put this in today's language. This guy doesn't have this guy's made all the money he wants to make, so now he's just going to sit around all day at home, and he got up, he flipped on his computer, come on, and he saw an ad, and the woman was beautiful, and it said, "Date me." Come on, I just bring it into this, not doing what he's supposed to be doing. He's supposed to be out there leading his troops in battle. But instead, he has become secure. Listen to what C.S. Lewis said in the book, The Pilgrim's Regress. Most of you probably never read. You've read The Pilgrim's Progress? This is The Pilgrim's Regress. This is what it says. It says, "You all know," said the guide, "that security is mortal's greatest enemy." Security is mortal's greatest enemy. It's what the enemy uses to lull people into a sense of security. And what I would say, I hate to correct C.S. Lewis, but I'm going to tell you my opinion. I think it would be better to say this, that it is the illusion of security that is our greatest enemy. Because our security is Christ. But the illusion of security is that everything is well and I'm not leaning on Jesus Christ. I'm not aware of the battle going on around me. Okay, we all know David failed. How many of you know the story of David and Bathsheba? Everybody know it, or do I need to go over every detail? Well, I'll just go over it real quick. I'm not going to read it. David sees Bathsheba. Okay, let's back up. Kings are at war. David's at home. The people in the kingdom are working. He's sleeping. He wakes up, walks out on his roof. This could be a point of pride. Look at I don't know. I'm just thinking here out loud. He's looking around, sees a beautiful woman, and that's not enough. It never is. So he calls for his servants, takes another step forward into the trap. He says, "Go find out who she is." They go find out who she is, come back and tell him. Just so happens, she's the granddaughter of one of his servants. That should have been enough to stop him, but it wasn't. And then he said, "Send for her." And then we know what happens. They get together and have a child. She gets pregnant. And then she gets a hold of David, sends him an Instagram or something. I don't know. A baby bump, I don't know. A selfie. Everybody under 40 got that. They took a picture. I don't know how, but anyway, she said, I'm pregnant, I'm a child. What should David have done? What he should have done earlier. He should have said, "Oh, I'm sorry, oh God, I'm sorry," should have repented. No. Now this complacency has led into a full-scale cover-up. Because now I'm embarrassed as king to be in this situation. Because complacency is our enemy. Complacency is the enemy of David. It's leading him down a terrible path. So David comes up with this bright idea. See, it just so happens that Bathsheba is married to a veteran who's still out on his other tour of duty over in Iraq. And David's like the commander-in-chief, like a president would be. I got an idea. I know what I'll do. Uriah was a husband. He was a Hittite, whatever that is. Usually ites aren't good, but in this one, he's a good guy. He sends a message. I want to see Uriah, have him come home. Here's his plan. I'm going to have Uriah come home. I'm going to give him some nonsense message. I'm going to let him go home to Bathsheba, right? And we know what happens when a guy comes home from leave, his first night home. Then I'm going to send him back to war. The baby's going to be here. Who knows? A couple weeks difference. Nobody's going to know. I cover it up. We're all good. But here's the problem. Uriah has more integrity than David does. And Uriah shows up in David's court, and David gives him the message, talks how's things going, gets a report from him. He goes, okay, I want you to go back and spend the night, go back home, enjoy some time with your wife. Instead, David gets up the next morning, Uriah's asleep at the steps of the temple with the other guards. He's like, what? Or the palace. What's going on? Uriah, what's up? I gave you a pass. I gave you a military. You're allowed to go home for the night. And he said, why would I sleep at home with my wife when the men of Israel are out doing battle? Oh, come on. Uriah's heart was in the battle. David's heart was about himself now. He'd entered into a place of complacency. Uriah had not become complacent. Uriah knew that if he went home, he would get out of his battle mode. He would get out of his battle mode. He didn't have time for affections. He was more important that he come back to his wife when the fighting was over than he have a break from the fighting with his wife. He was in war mode, where David was supposed to be. Uriah knew there was still a battle going. There's no time for me to go home. I've got to keep fighting. I've got to stay alert. So David goes, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll get him drunk. That's the solution to a lot of people's problems, isn't it? Can't get you to do what I want. I'll just get you drunk. So the next night, David gets him all liquored up. And he says, all right, now he'll stumble his way home. But no, again, Uriah stumbles his way back to the other guards. And even in a drunken stupor, holds on to his integrity. Don't ever tell me that the drink is the reason you did what you did. Come on. Now David is frustrated. And he sees only one way out of this. But there's more than one way out of this. There's two ways out of this. He could come clean and admit his error. Or he could go to the next step and have Uriah killed. And that's what he did. He sent a message in Uriah's hand to Joab. He said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to get Uriah right up into the heat of the battle. And when things get going really good, pull everybody else away so that Uriah will die. Uriah carries his own death warrant as a faithful servant to David. To Joab, who's under David's command, who doesn't have a choice in this matter. That's why Joab's not judged for this. David's judged for it. Hands it to him, so Joab reads the letter. Next thing you know, they're going up against the city. They get Uriah up there among all the other people. Joab makes the call. They all come back. Uriah dies. David decides, now after Bathsheba's time of mourning, I'll marry the girl. Right? I'll do the right thing. After I killed her husband, of course. See, most people, they look at David and they see an adulterer. When I look at David, I see a murderer. A murderer. And it all happened because of complacency. He didn't get up that spring morning when they're supposed to go to war and say, you know what, I think I'll stay home, commit adultery and murder, have a big cover-up. Yeah, I think that's what I'll do. That's not what he did. He got up that morning and he said, you know what, things are going really well in the kingdom. There's really no reason for me to go out there. I mean, why does the king need to go out? I got plenty of people to do that for me. I have plenty of people to do battle. Pastor will pray for me. The church will pray over my family. I don't need to do any battle. I don't need to pray. Complacency comes. I've seen complacency firsthand right here. And it happened years ago when I first came here. When we were being interviewed, we slipped in to the area one night, and there was a bunch of cars out front. It was before our first interview. There's a bunch of cars in the parking lot. It was like a Monday night, and we're like, wow, what's going on? So they never knew we were here. I came up and I opened up the door, and you should have heard the prayers rising in this place. This place was full of just the energy of God. Oh, God, we're calling on you. We seek your direction, your wisdom. I didn't know at the time they were praying for me. They were praying for a pastor. I did not know that. I just thought they were just having a regular prayer meeting. I found out later that they were doing that because the church had been without a pastor for 4 months and were really seeking the Lord about it, right? So I got back in the car and I go, Susie, my God, revival's hit. We're just stepping into revival. This church is on fire. Yeah. So I came. I mean, and God brought us here. And a couple months later, or the next month, the first month here, we get ready to have that same prayer meeting, and 8 people show up instead of 40. Whoa, where's everybody at? Second week, 4 people showed up. Third week, 2 people showed up. And it got down to where it was me and Brother Jerry Murphy, the only 2 people showing up. Oh, I feel bad. No, listen, complacency set in. Why? Because you got a pastor. But here's the problem. The pastor can't fight your battle. He can only equip you to fight your own. I can't fight your battle. I just sat down with someone not too long ago and said, if I could, I would whip this devil for you. I would solve this problem, but I can't. But I can give you the tools to do it. I can teach you, and I can walk with you, and I can give you everything that you need by God's grace to do it. But there comes a time where we have to put on our big boy warrior pants and our big boy breast covering and our big boy sword and we got to go out and do it ourselves under the power of God. And if we do not do that, if we keep expecting everybody else to fight our battles, then we will end up just like David, looking back and going, where did I go wrong? I never intended for my life to end up here, but it's here. David was equipped. He was the best resource person at that time in the world. And yet he still failed. He was a man after God's heart. He penned the psalm. He stood against a sword or a spear being thrown against him. He withstood Saul's evil. He remained with his integrity intact the whole time. He never raised his hand against King Saul. He didn't forcibly take the throne. But now the devil sneaks in through a snake called complacency and sets him on a path for destruction. And today, when you mention David's name, the number one word you hear next is Bathsheba. I know, I've done it. Everybody knows David and Bathsheba, like Samson and, not Samson and all the Philistines he killed. How many Philistines did he kill? How many? Anybody know the number? No, but we know how many people he had an illicit affair and marriage to, don't we? But in the end, Samuel pulled the pillars down and destroyed a nation of Philistines. More at one moment in time than he had done through all his campaign. His life ended stronger than it ever was at any other point, but yet what do we remember about Samson? His failure with Delilah. I want to tell you something. No matter how much we do as believers, if we fall into complacency and end up like David, we will be remembered for our failure, not for our successes. You think about Jimmy Swaggart, what do you think? Sin. He's pastoring today. Thousands of people. Turned his life around. Thousands of people. You get ministering all the time. What does people think? Sin, sinner, adulteress, prostitute. Jim Bakker. You mentioned Jim Bakker. What do you think? Not the millions of dollars he spent and raised for the poor and helping people out. And even today, still back preaching the gospel. No, nobody thinks about that. What's the first thing that comes? Thief, prison, Jim Bakker, con man. So that's why David is remembered today more about what he did wrong than what he did right. Here's what's interesting to me. This guy that God says after his own heart, God refuses to gloss over his sin. Instead, he highlights it. He skips almost 20 years of kingdom reign and gets right to this point. Because we can undo all the good we do in a moment in time. I'm not interested in what he did. I'm interested in what led him to the place of weakness. Because I understand something. There's no one in this room that is not capable of doing anything. It's one of the things I learned as a police officer. Everyone is capable of anything under the right circumstances, the right time, and the right attitude. Anybody. I could never kill somebody. Do not deceive yourself. You could kill someone. I could never do this. I could never do that. You're wrong. You're a person in the flesh, and that flesh is rotten to the core. And if you allow that flesh, you get complacent and quit doing battle and quit hanging yourself up on that cross daily on your, not Jesus' cross, your cross. Only one worthy of his cross, him. But we're supposed to crucify our flesh daily. We quit doing that, we're going to end up in the same kind of boat. This is not a guesswork. This isn't guesswork. This is absolute. This is what will happen. David is remembered today because of his failure. But what I want us to get out of this today is what led to it. He did not understand that his biggest enemy was not the Philistines. His biggest enemy was complacency. He didn't understand his biggest enemy wasn't Saul. See, here's the thing. King Saul, he could see him coming. He knew what was going on. He threw real spears. I don't know why he's called them swords. They don't throw swords, do they? They're pretty desperate if they throw a sword. But this is an enemy you could feel, you could touch, you could see. But complacency is the enemy that'll lay down with you and comfort you and say everything's okay. It'll soothe your soul. It's going to be okay. Just go to bed. You don't need to pray. Your children are all right. It's okay. That's complacency. It's a snake. It's our enemy. I remember years ago watching on Christian television a family, a man and a woman. I don't remember who they were, but I know they were ministers. And they were sharing, the woman was sharing about their son. They'd lost their son in a tragic car accident at 17 years old, killed, dead, which obviously goes along with killed. But just want to make the point. He died in a car crash. And they were on one of the television interviews, you know, like Jim and Betty. You know what I'm talking about. Love them people, by the way. Don't know their last name, but I love them. Robinson. And I think that was the program they were on. Some of you may have seen this. And I remember the woman, she was saying, you know, it was 11 o'clock at night and the Holy Spirit just woke me up. And I saw my son with blood on him. And the Spirit of God rose up on me to pray. And I got down on my knees by my bed and I prayed and I prayed. And that burden never lifted. And finally I just went, God, I'm going to give this to you. I'm going back to bed. And he died. Let me tell you when you're supposed to give it back to God, when the burden lifts. I'll just tell you, her son would be alive today had she not went to bed when the Holy Spirit was stirring her, had she not entered into a place of complacency, saying everything's going to be all right. Listen, let me tell you something. You cannot sit back and say, God's got this, everything's going to be all right, and refuse to do anything yourself, refuse to take charge, refuse to pray, refuse to fight, refuse to stand up, refuse to resist. You sit back and say, God's going to take care of it, and God the whole time is saying, I've given you the tools, I've given you the resources, I've given you the wisdom, I've given you the drive to do it. Don't lay back and say, God's going to do it. That's as bad as saying, God's in control. Que sera, sera. We see what happens to a world where people think God's in control. Listen, if God's in control of what's going on this planet, He is a poor manager. No, He gave control to man. Man's a poor manager. God gave us all we need to meet every need, to feed every hungry child, to meet every need for every family. He's given us all we need. The resources are here on the planet today. And selfish mankind is hoarded and kept things. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about resources, time, selfishness that is integrated into our society, and not just our society, into the world culture has caused what we see around the world. Don't ever let anyone get away with that blasphemous thing saying, if there's a God, why are people dying of diseases? Don't let them do it. That's right. It's man's rulership in the earth that has caused problems. And I can't tell you how many people I've had come to me and go, boy, I can't believe, you see this on social media all the time. Someone does something really bad and goes, if there's a God, why does He allow evil to exist? Here's the problem. Your definition of evil is according to your mind. If God did not allow evil to exist, how many of you know none of us would be here today? Not one. So we better be glad God lets evil exist. We better be glad God allows people to make free choices, because we were able to choose life. He said, today I set before you life and death, and He helps out. Choose life. Whose decision is it? Ours. Jesus did the work on the cross. He did everything that needs to be done. All we have to do is by faith receive it, by faith accept it, but we have to do something. We can't just say, I believe. We have to accept it. We have to receive it by faith. Something has to be done. The illusion of security is a great enemy of mankind. God had prepared the people of Israel for these times. The last place we're going to go to is Deuteronomy chapter 8. God had prepared them. He promised them, He said, I'm going to give you a land that's going to have houses you didn't build, wells you didn't dig, and vineyards you didn't plant. Man, I'm going to bless your socks off. But listen to me carefully. Be very careful when you get in that place that you don't forget I'm the one that gave it to you. Don't get comfortable. Don't get complacent. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, it's very easy. It's right at the beginning of your Bible there. Verse 11. Before they enter into Canaan land, listen to this. God says, beware that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping His commandments and his ordinances and his statutes, what I'm commanding you today. Otherwise, when you have eaten and are satisfied, you hear that? You're satisfied. And you have built good houses and lived in them. And when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold multiply, and all that you have multiplies, then your heart will become proud, and you will forget the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of slavery. What's God saying? He's saying, be aware of complacency. Don't ever think that just because you are walking in the blessing that the enemy's not plotting an attack against you. See, 15 years ago today, you could get on an airline and you could hijack it with a box knife. But on 9/11 of 2001, when these men hijacked these airliners with box knives and brought down these planes and killed thousands of people, that ended the day that you will ever be able to hijack an American air flight with a box blade. How many of you know that? You get on there today with a box blade and what's going to happen to you? The passengers will beat you to death because they are no longer complacent about people with box blades. But the reason 9/11 succeeded is because comfort, security. Listen. You haven't seen a 9/11 in Israel, have you? You know why? They're not comfortable. They live on the verge of extinction every day, and they know it, and they're planning for it. And let me tell you, that's coming. War is coming in the Middle East. This is the end of days, and I have to always insert this into my messages. We're at the end of the days right now. We're at the end of the days. We're going to be seeing war in the Middle East like we've never seen. People are lining themselves up secretly against Israel and publicly. It is coming, but I will tell you something today. You can take it to the bank. Israel will overcome for two reasons. One, God and them have a covenant. Number two, they are prepared. The 6-day war, everybody was so amazed that the 6-day war was won so effectively by Israel, but most people didn't know they'd been practicing for that war for months. They built mock airstrips just like we're in Egypt. They had to take out, and they were bombing them in Israel before it ever happened. Today, their military is already running through scenarios to bomb Iran. You can believe it. They already know what's going to happen. It's already planned. They have, if this happens, we're going to do this. If this happens, Jerusalem is the safest place to live on God's green earth today. Not because of their military, but because of the mindset of their military. They're not complacent. And we went right back into the edge of complacency in this country. After 9/11, churches packed out. People sought God. Look what's happened now. Our country has turned more secular and more ungodly by the day. That is not solved by laws. That is solved by the transformation of hearts. Man, preach myself out of breath. But you wouldn't get on a plane in 2001 and hijack an Israeli airline and crash it. It just would not happen. You know why? Because they take security serious. And now what does America do? Overreacts to our security, as usual. Overreact, just like police departments do. When something bad happens, they overreact with bad policies. The Israelites know how to properly handle security, and they hit me when we went over there. When Stacy and I flew into Tel Aviv at about 2 in the morning, it hit me how serious they were. When the flight attendant comes by and says, shut out all interior passenger lights. We don't allow any lights to be on this plane at all when we're landing. Coming in off the Mediterranean. How many planes have been shot down from Israel in the Mediterranean as they were landing at the airport? I mean, who wants to name them? But you know why they haven't been shot down? Because they're always looking to be shot down. And that's when my stomach kind of went up in my throat. When they said, I looked at the stewardess who was Israeli and I said, ma'am, why are we shutting out all the lights for landing? She said, that way surface-to-air missiles can't find us as easily. Surface-to-air missiles? And when they get on your tour bus over there, they ain't worried about political correctness. There's an AR-15 strapped on a 21-year-old and the barrel's flopping around in your face. They don't care because they're about surviving. They are not complacent. Their nation was complacent one time before. It will never be complacent again. To this day, when their military people go, and everybody is compulsory there. Everyone goes in the military. They got a whole nation of people that can put on a uniform and fight. Every one of them. Except for the losers who refuse and claim some special exemption. Yeah, I said it. There's a place there called the Holocaust Museum. It will grab your heart as you walk through that thing. You see the history of the Holocaust. And there's this one room that's about half the size of this church with a glass floor. And under it are all not all, but many shoes from the prison camp of the people that died. Because remember, they had them take off their shoes. This just littered with little toddler shoes, little kid shoes, lady shoes. littered. They take every soldier through there and they make them read every sign. And when they get to the end of that, they say, never again. Never again. And then they take them up on the mountain where the Jews were almost exterminated. They committed suicide, if you remember that, when the Romans sieged Jerusalem. And they went up on that big rock. And they hid out up there. And Rome built a ramp to get to them. They all committed suicide on top of that plateau. They take these same soldiers up that trolley, up that plateau, and they say, never again. Let me tell you something. They are a shining example of knowing what complacency will do. And we are not. And we better learn. Not just in our individual lives, but we need to learn it as a nation. I want to close with this. The Prime Minister of Israel, like him, hate him, whatever you want to do, this is what I've heard about him from people that have studied him. They say that first of all, he has prayer meeting once a week with everybody that will come. He invites all his leadership to his home for prayer. And second of all, right now, and since he's been Prime Minister, he studies the Bible to find out where Israel lost its wars and why they lost them, so that he won't make the same mistake. You know what happened in our individual lives if we begin to look at the Bible and go, okay, David made a mistake here. Now what led to that? That's what we're doing today. What if we really took serious these things and moved them past just stories, and we saw them as shining examples of how we can be victorious and avoid these kind of problems? And avoid these kind of sins and these things that so easily beset us. What if we just decided, man, I want to be knowledgeable about people that failed. I want to understand why they failed. But no, what we want to know is how they failed. How deep did they fall? It doesn't matter how deep or how they fell. What matters is what led to it. How can we avoid this from happening to us? What would happen if we became serious about our own lives and we began to take responsibility for ourselves and our own spiritual growth and our safety of our family? What if we really began to understand that we may be what's keeping the enemy at the gate? We may be, the prayer we pray over our children today may be what keeps them from going out in a tragic end today. Come on. What would happen if a group of people like us understood that complacency is an enemy and refused to be complacent? And asked the Lord to root out complacency in our life. What would happen? He would do it. He would show us. And I know, because we're humans, that every person in this room has areas of complacency. Everybody, including me. And I know that the Lord knows exactly what they are, and He knows what's number one on the punch list for us to deal with. Wisdom tells me that whenever we get into times like this, to tell you to go after one thing. Don't try two, don't try three. Find one area that you're complacent in and get victory over it. Get good at what's getting you bad. Take authority. Take control. Ask the Lord to help you. How do we fight complacency? By staying on guard. The Scripture says, stay alert, for your enemy walks around like a roaring lion looking for those he may devour. That means there's some people he can't devour. Sometimes he can't devour you because you've been standing strong in the Lord and in the power of His might. But sometimes, as you well know, he can come in and take a little bite out of you. Why? Because you weren't ready, you weren't expecting, you weren't prepared. Today's all about being prepared. Today's all about identifying our enemy, which is complacency. Let's all stand.